Well, hey friends, Alain Picard here, and thank you for joining me for this live stream painting demonstration. We're gonna take a trip to the apple orchard together. Yes, right here in the studio, but we will be painting these beautiful apples hanging from the branches and just exploring some important lessons as we do. Well, look at that beautiful complementary color that's just presenting in this scene naturally with the red apples against the green foliage, and what to do about that blue sky. But also, we'll be sculpting form using value as well as some vibrancy. We'll use some color vibrancy to turn the form as well as value. Something really powerful, I think, is positive and negative shapes. How do we design this scene using those positive shapes of apples and foliage against the negative shape of the sky? Really powerful opportunities for us to learn together. So I'm excited to be with you for this painting time. Thank you for joining me from so many different places around the globe. It's a wonderful day to just be at the easel creating together. And whether you're picking up your pastels or your painting medium and painting along with me, or you want to sit back and just enjoy this demonstration, thanks for being here. I'm really excited to be with you. Okay, let's head to the easel. I'll let you know what I've got here. So I've got a really beautiful trip to the orchard that led me to many reference images, and I captured a little vignette, just a couple of apples hanging heavy on the branch, which is so pretty. And we're gonna be using UART Dark. This is UART 400 Dark today. It's a dark surface. Any dark surface will do, but it really is gonna be a graphic approach, pulling more light out of the dark than pushing darks in, obviously. And we'll be using soft pastels. And the first thing I wanna do is just start with sketching. And to sketch, I'm gonna use a pastel pencil. This way you can readily see it on the board. This is a Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencil, and it's just nice for sketching. So squinting down, we're just gonna frame these apples onto this. And I don't worry about perfect drawing when I do this. It's really about placement. So I'm actually gonna start kind of crude and just lay a few things out. I wanna make sure that this main apple falls on that lower area and has got a nice size to it. So we really emphasize the scale of that apple. You know, we're looking up at these apples, which is a different point of view, isn't it? Because typically, you know, we don't always paint views looking up. So I thought that's a kind of an interesting aspect of this. So we'll just kind of frame out this apple. And apples really are not perfectly round. They've got an irregular mass and shape to them. And I love that they connect with one another. So I'm just gonna begin to create the other apple here, which is above and to the right, and just kind of sitting right on top of all of this glorious foliage. And I'm kind of looking at the straight angle changes of the apple first, just to frame it out in space. It just comes down here. I like that these two apples join together as buddies. They're kindred apples. And you know, we're always looking with this positive and negative shape thing, we're always looking to frame out an interesting design. And you know, the square composition of this is an 8x8 square, if you're wondering. It's already an interesting shape. And then we'll just really enjoy with our mark making, carving and sculpting the positive and negative shapes out to really bring this design to life. So now that I've come around, I'm just strengthening. I like using this kind of sanguine color because it's a red apple. It's a warm, it relates nicely. It's not terribly important to match, especially if you're only using it for linear work, but I think it helps. Just a little longer here on this guy. And then what we need to do now, we've got our outside shapes of these apples, but what we need to do now is just look at anywhere we see that light striking and separate the light and shadow. So I'm just gonna very simply come and separate that light and shadow. We see actually some further dark Just look at these little tiles, little shapes, and try to just simplify your description of them. We don't want to make it, you know, a really great drawing. We're just kind of framing out shapes so that we can be bold and loose when we paint, okay? Come around there, you can start to see there's the light striking the apple, there's the light striking underneath. It's got a really nice rim light that brings it alive, both in the form, but also in the exciting color temperature, the warm reds of the apple coming alive. Okay, so there you go, that. And then we've got just a couple of little moments where this apple, which is primarily in shadow, gets sparkled up at the edge. It gets a nice little kick light, gets a little moment to shine. Actually, there's some cool light hitting the underside. So let's just locate the underside. I'll do this lightly. I don't want to bring a bunch of this color into the drawing, but just kind of locate. There's a little dark core there. These guys have, the bottom of the apple has a little texture. And now just laying out some leaf patterns. We have these apples hanging on the branch. So I'm gonna create a branch, nice thick branch, comes up over here, drops behind the apples. We've got leaves going up this way. As I squint, I'm just gonna create some, actually I've gotten a little messy here, so I'm just gonna come in and clean this up. I'm gonna just create a shape, like a little leaf shape, maybe another leaf shape. It's all about the contour shapes when we're looking at the positive. We're finding that outside shape and just utilizing the contour as a way to describe it. I'm actually punching in a little closer than the reference just to make it intimate and interesting. And so yeah, a little bit of sky over here. I don't need every leaf, certainly. It's a bit of chaos behind the order. The two apples are clear and solid, and then the chaos of the foliage against the very simple and passive quiet of the sky, which actually is a welcome. Active and passive is an interesting conversation to have in art. You know, you don't want all busy. I'm going to actually frame this leaf in here. I like this leaf off the apple. So I'm closer to the edge than I was in the reference, than it lays out in the reference, but that's okay. I want those red apples to sing. We don't need all the leaves necessarily. I think it's fun that there's a leaf kind of punching in on the side here. I'll use a couple of those. I like this idea that there's a little leaf just dropping down. So it gives us like some nice little contouring shapes to play with, and then coming up. Let your eye go around those masses, really helpful. And then we come in here and just all the craziness ensues, which is fun. And there's actually like a bit of a branch going this way. Let's just maybe put that branch in. So we've got mostly of a drawing. I'm just gonna clean this up. Stepping back for a moment, I actually can use, like, here's a turquoise new pastel, just with a bit of a point. Before I get my big bold pastel sticks out, I can come around this where the light is going to strike it and start thinking about how that negative shape relates to the whole. So this really is a fun exercise, this painting in design, in positive and negative shapes. And we want to create variety and interest with our contour shapes, with our active and passive. So very active foliage, passive sky. Our big and small, big apples, small leaves. All these interesting ways that we can create variety and interest in our paintings. I'm just kind of circling for myself. Hey, I can do a little bit of sky holes here, a little sky holes there. I'm just giving myself some guidelines, or like a blueprint for where we can go as we begin to use the big, bold, soft pastels. And whenever I use a dark board, I'm very direct. So that is one of the joys for me of using the dark surface, is being very direct with the mark making, with the application of the marks, and letting the marks create its own vocabulary, its own language as you view the work. So I'm just coming around this a little more, that we've got the characters in place. This will make, working with the soft pastel a lot less, insecure is one word. Like, you want to work confidently when you begin mark making with soft pastels. And if you're not sure where the shapes go, that can impact your mark making. So this will keep us confident. I'll stop there to have that laid out. And if you like, so we can go right into the apples, or we can begin to frame out the sky just to create a really bold, but I want to get right into the rich darks of the apples first. So if you look down at the palette here, I've got, some nice colors, a little bit of new pastels, those just a couple pencils, but we've got reds in the rich red, the red violet, cooler, and then really just some lavenders over here. And we've got really warm yellow ochres into yellow, green ochre, all the way up to that gorgeous sunlit green, cooler greens into the middle tone, blue greens, turquoise, because it's my favorite thing on the planet, and ultramarine blue, or just a little bit more of the red family in that blue. So coming in, I want to get right into the dark side of these apples. So I'm going to pull some rich, dark colors right away, okay? Rich crimsony warm, cool, and then I've got a deeper, darker cool here. Nice rich color. So let's come up and just begin to play with these. So looking at this, of course, the surface of the board is black, so even this dark shows up. It's probably the same value, just a different color. And that gives us that rich, beautiful, cool red violet in the shadowy side of the apple. And I think playing, even within the shadows, playing between the warm and the cool is really fun. So we'll do some of that here. And if you're ever not sure, like what pastels you should be using, or what's the difference between these hard pastels and the soft pastels, I have a great resource. What pastels should I use? I even have another resource called What Paper Should I Use? And you can check the links in the description for those. They're free, and if that can be helpful to you, check that out. Because yeah, definitely different densities of pastels have different impact on your painting. This is a soft pastel, but not overly soft. I think it's a Giraud. So some extra soft pastels would be Schminke and Sennelier. And they can be very, very creamy. Blue Earth. So we start to layer that beautiful red violet in, and I've got a slightly lighter version here, and it just brings, you'll notice, because the value is a little lighter, it gives the feeling like there's some roundness to the middle of that apple. It creates some form. And then I'm going to add just a little over here as well. I love that there's a movement towards the green family or the yellow family inside of this apple. We'll play around with that soon enough. But then I also picked up this warmer kind of crimson, and let's layer that in too, because the warmth is in there on the side. Ooh, nice and rich, really beautifully warm. Now this is a Terry Ludwig, and it's a beautiful crimson red. It's quite soft. And so even in the shadows, these apples can be lush and delicious and really carry some beautiful vibrancy. Just because it's dark doesn't mean it's dead, my friends. This is very much alive, this vibrant apple. And as we come closer to the light source, things warm up quite a bit, get really hot. So Yes, we are building toward the light. And I love that color that we just used there. And I'm gonna actually switch right over now and go to some sky work. So I'm gonna pick up some blue violets, some ultramarine blues. If you look at the palette, I'll have some blue violet. Yeah, maybe a little bit lighter version. I have to play to find the right, there's a little darker cobalt, and then I'm gonna get right into those turquoise colors. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm gonna start with the quieter blue, okay? Here we go. So the blue violet actually agrees with the red of the apples, and then that turquoise is really gonna pop. And I won't cover all the surface of the paper right away. I'll start with a little bit of a lighter touch, but you know, things are gonna get exciting pretty quick here with this 400 grit dark surface. And I'm gonna carve and sculpt. I'm going to carve out the negative shape here. That's why having a little bit of a shape described with our hard pastels was helpful, because I can come right up to it and begin to, you know, make marks that describe that contour. Squinting the eyes, keeping the simple version of it going. Yes, yes. Now, mark making is such a joy, and you know, it's different when we're looking graphically here at the scene. But it is so fun to work this way. You can be bolder when you approach things, looking at the abstraction and not trying to get too, you know, certainly realistic. I mean, realism is an interesting word. Something can look real and be very loose. I'm starting to pop in little punches of negative shape into the form. Come around here. And we're gonna need to adjust colors, not use just one, but I'm just trying to come around the form a bit and describe that contour shape. And this particular pastel, it's not too soft. It's got a nice, it's just giving me some value to work on. Look at that, it's coming, that apple's popping out in space on us. I'll switch over to a paler blue, ultramarine blue, and just continue underneath there. Sometimes I like a nice choppy mark to describe it, to describe the contour, you know, something assertive, something that really cuts in and describes that form. There we go. And then I'll just scrub in a little down here, get some pigment on the surface that we can play with. And this apple is coming alive. I'm gonna carve in at it with this deeper blue. Got this beautiful cool color on the side of the apple that we can play with. On the edge of the leaf. And then coming up here, we have a sunlit leaf against the sky. Haven't brought in any of that complementary green yet, just some blue. I'm gonna switch back to the pale blue. And these leaves coming in, we're just leaving the contour shape at the moment. We will add color to them, but let your eye just revel in those shapes. Enjoy the shapes. The shapes are powerful in creating an interesting image. Just cutting around this and just enjoy, like carving with the pastels. And, you know, I'm just gonna take a moment as I'm working, because I was just realizing, you know, I'm carving around with these pastels. I'm using these soft pastels in a really sculptural way. And these painterly techniques, if they're interesting to you, you might want to try, if you've never tried. I have this really fun free lesson. It's called Painterly Edges. And we take an apple more in the still life context. And it's like, how can you interpret an apple in a very loose painterly way? Break the edges, create a lot of loose expressive mark making If that's something that you struggle with, you feel like you get a little bit tight or you have trouble breaking the edges, the Paint of the Edges lesson will be so powerful. The link is in the description. You can grab that and you can be doing that. Don't leave this live. That would be, you'll miss where this painting goes. But ultimately, you can enjoy the Paint of the Edges lesson and practice some of these techniques, okay? All right, stepping back, you can see it's starting to come together. Let's just fill in some of this with an initial statement of mark making. There we go. And once you start having these forms described, the image will take shape. Now we've got this whole clustering on that edge of leaves, so I'm gonna wait actually over here. Maybe I'll just put one. Yeah, maybe I'll just put one or two marks in to describe a little bit of activity there. Just a little something. See, a little soft edge transition. I try to leave the marks on the UArt Dark because they're so wonderful. I like to just let them live on the surface. I'm gonna put down all of those ultramarines and pick up a turquoise here. And you'll see, like when I use this, that now we're leaning towards the green side of blue. And that will begin to be a complement to the apples. And it's really pretty. So the blue-green family will already start to give us some complementary relationship that's stimulating and exciting. And of course, this turquoise, not only is it toward green, but it's a more vibrant color. So it's gonna have some activity. It'll have some resonance that's really exciting. This is also a very soft pastel. So I know where I'm putting it, I'm good. I'm not gonna be removing it. I'm not going to be, trying to put some apple over it and be dealing with too much pigment, right? So that's pigment management. We have to always think about the surface of the painting and don't overwhelm the surface of the painting too soon. Use that very light touch at the start and then build towards a heavier touch later in a painting, okay? Look at how pretty that looks mixed right in with the blue-green. I just love that, it's beautiful. Very effective. I'm just gonna bring it right in here as well. And it's an active color, so it draws attention to itself. We know those people that draw attentions to themselves and we love them. There you go. The turquoise is one of them. So here we have the apples. We need the light side. I'm going to clean my hands with a little bit of wet wipe just before I get into that light side of the apple. That'll be really fun. And the foliage, of course. Here we go. So what should we put? Let's go with some nice pinks. I've got some really pretty pinks on my palette that some of them are cooler and some of them are lighter where the pink itself has more light or warmth in it, It has, it's moving towards yellow. I've got the yellow here. So that's really good. I'm gonna pick up a few and we'll go from there. And then I'll probably dash in with some really rich reds soon as well. We'll hold off for a moment. So just coming down that core shadow, the turn of the light and shadow on this apple, I'm bringing in a lighter value, but still colorful, still really rich and colorful with this pink. Gives us a lot of activity and energy, which is beautiful. Yeah, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this warm, rusty red and I'm going to put it into this little nook because I want to do it now. I don't want to wait when I've got a bunch of lights surrounding. I'm just going to add that in. There's all this beautiful red that just comes alive when the sun hits it, right on that edge, right here. So I just want to get some of that warmth in there. Actually, even at the edge of the apple, all this reflected light kind of bounces onto this leaf next to it. So I'm just going to add a little over there. That will be confusing at the moment because we'll think the apple is wider, but we will resolve that confusion momentarily. Okay, so that's great. Now let's come back to the pinks. I'm just going to use this cooler pink for a moment and just kind of layer it onto that higher area that's not quite as light. Bring that down the edge. You can see this is a beautiful color. I love these rich pigmented pinks. And then moving into the light, I'm going to use a warmer pink. Pink that is toward yellow. It's got evidence of that sunlight in it. So there's afternoon sunlight in the orchard. So I'm going to layer it in. And I'm putting it right on there, friends. I mean, we sketched it in. We know where this apple belongs. And I am not going to be bashful. I'm layering it on direct and rather heavy-handed. So I would just say, make sure if you're using a direct, heavy-handed approach that you have clarified where it goes, so because it is thicker in its application. And just over here, just to know where that light is, I'm going to drop this sunlit moment, and then we'll have our light against dark already working in the scene. And you can see this is another creamy kind of yellowish tint. Not very strong yellow. It's on the very, very pale yellow, but it's there. You can absolutely see it. I'm going to let this flicker on this top edge of this guy, just a bit there. It's pretty. And it's coming alive. Now, what do we need? We need that rich middle ground red. We need green to complement this beautiful apples. So I'm going to bring some of this rich cadmium red in, right in here, and just let it come alive. Isn't that wonderful? The power of vibrant color to stimulate the eyes and to draw attention. And I'm not going to touch that color because I'll just muddy it up if I do. I'm going to let it sing. It's just so beautiful. I'm going to use a deeper red, clean this up, on my, just to come in here and just bring a little more volume to this side of the apple. You see how just bringing some warmth there, it feels like it's rounding. I'm going to scrub at this just a little here and there just to break that edge. Yes, I see the greens in the apple. Maybe we'll let the viewer know more about that as we develop. I'm going to come under this right here and just, I'm a lefty, I'm a southpaw, so I've got to like sneak under there and just try to get a little edge going. Yep. This is a Unison, this pastel, so it's not as soft, a nice medium soft. Unison's a beautiful UK-based pastel. So it holds its shape and it creates quite a gorgeous line. I'm going to come under this apple, maybe where there's the ground is bouncing back up on it. I'm going to emphasize it a little bit because there's less volume visible on this apple. So just a little bit of like warm light underneath will be a fun kind of statement. Just a bit more of that warmth. I got little finger marks on there. It's good. And on that side, we're going to hit that with some lavender, some really pretty cooler violet, and just let that frame out the edge of this apple in a surprising and wonderful way, a little cool color. The surface of an apple, it's a reflective surface. It's a slick, shimmery surface, so it loves reflection. So from the warm side to the cool side, it's one of those fruits that loves reflections. We are like right there where we're almost ready for our foliage, but I'm just going to add a little, see that little black area? I avoided that only because I wanted to put some warm pink on the light side in there. And just being bold and direct. Sometimes we just, the subject itself calls for a bold, direct application. Also, the surface calls for a bold and direct application. You Are Darker is one of those surfaces that beckons you to be bold. So now we've got the apples. We've got, we've got a shape, a wonderful negative shape for the leaves. We're gonna put some stuff in there. We won't need everything, but I wanna deal with this first. And I think I'm gonna come up here with my rich dark violet and just add a little more. Same color I had before, just adding a little bit more. And I don't know, this is some kind of, I don't think I'm gonna use this, some kind of purple. Just checking how it's a very deep purpley shade, less chromatic, so I don't want to lose kind of the excitement of color. So coming back to something stronger, I'm gonna just put a bit more exciting red in. Ooh, yes, this is a super soft, beautiful color here. Are we allowed to embellish as artists when we see color that we love? Of course we are. We just have to make sure that the suspension of disbelief is there. We want people to believe that the colors we're using could be possible. And we are trying to describe nature, which is infinitely inspiring and nuanced, and we don't have all that nuance. So we've got to use a few colors and values to describe the glory of nature. So sometimes we've got to embellish a bit in order to do so. All right, I'm gonna turn around for a moment. We got ourselves a couple of apples and some nice negative shape for the sky. It's time to bring that complementary green in. I hope you're having fun. It's very important with the green not to overdo it, not to use, green is tricky, like especially chromium green or the middle green. We don't want to overuse that. So lots of green variety, lean to the blue side, lean to the yellow side, neutralized moments. And I think we can make this work with a kind of loosely described chaos in the foliage against the order around it, okay? So let's do that. And again, paint on the edges if you want to have more ideas on how to be loose and let go of detail. And if you find yourself a more linear style painter, like Botticelli, Botticelli's Venus. The painterly way is a much more loose, expressive style, like Joaquin Sorolla, someone like that. And we break the edges, we glory in the mark making, and I'd love to help you with that. So check out some of these free resources in the description, okay? Here we go. Let's start with darks and blue greens on the palette. I'm gonna pick up a few palette colors, dark green, blue green, middle green, that's on a kind of cool side, and then I'll jump over to like warmer notes as well. And then we'll play with lights later. But I'm gonna start in the darks. So here, pretty dark, rich kind of sagey forest. It's the same value as the surface, it's just greener. It's a green dark, whereas the UR dark is colorless. It's a neutral. So I'm just gonna come up here where I see a little bit more of those dark values and just add a little green before we go anywhere else. Okay, and basically this whole thing is all wrong, so I'm just gonna take it out. Listen to me. My drawing is wrong. Yes, it's wrong. And it's all gonna be fine because we're sculpting with form. I always love the admission of mistakes. It's quite freeing and healing in life when we say, I was wrong, as well as saying, I made a mistake. And in painting, it's like, oh, look, I can adjust that, and no problem. We don't have to be perfect. Permission to make mistakes, permission to adjust and adapt as we go, permission to even change your mind in the midst of the painting if it doesn't compromise your, the location of your big shapes if you've already applied your darks. But as I put this green in, this would be a green that if I use too much of will be a problem, but it's already, the complement is beginning to emerge, which is exciting. I love that. I'm gonna bring a lighter green in. You'll see it happen right away. The power of complementary color, it never ceases to amaze me. Such an exciting, scientific truth that these opposites magnetize and create stimulus visually as we use them. Isn't that beautiful? We just add a little this and that on our contour shapes and they begin to come alive and add some interest. Squinting my eyes now, I want to come right under this beautiful red with some of this green. And just really let that complement one another. And we can be quite, I'm gonna reach toward a more yellow, a lighter value green right now. And we can be quite bold and undetailed about this, you know, quite suggestive, quite impressionistic in our description, and it can still make sense, actually quite exciting when we leave the expressive version of the thing sometimes. You know, the camera can record nature, but we're the artist. So what do we have to say? What might be interesting? How can we glory in the mark making, in the color? How can we share something personal? We don't need all the detail, friends, and it's quite beautiful. So as you see, this yellow conveys the sense of sunlight punching through the leaves in a really pretty way. And I'm just indicating it. I'm squinting my eyes. Where does it happen? I'll come back in with a little bit more regular green, as it were. Regular green, a mid-tone. I'm just looking for how I can convey certain moments, the edge of a leaf. I will tell you this, it's true of floral artists and leafy fruits. The fruit's kind of easy. In the continuum of easy to hard, the fruit is usually easier. The flower is often a little easier. The foliage is what separates the more experienced artists from the less, because the foliage is where we'll probably use some of those greens a little heavily. We might, you know, we'll tend to show our inexperience in the foliage. Let me say it that way. So just continue to look for that variety in the greens and to capture a suggestion and let yourself see those shapes. Foliage, the thing about it is leaves are turning in all kinds of different directions and angles, and our marks can help describe that. I'm going to come into this crazy leaf that looks a little funky and flat right now and just add a little rusty orange, maybe a little indication of the stem work. I'm going to cut in on the edge. I'm going to add greenish ochre. Remember, I put that red and it is a bit confusing. I'm going to add the greenish ochre in so we know, oh, okay, that's the leaf. That's the leaf, not the apple going behind that. Just, yeah, there we go. So it's getting a little more clear what's happening. Just a bit more of that ochre, greenish ochre in and around. Stepping back, checking it out, and I'm just going to see my southpawness gets in my way here because my hand blocks my eyesight. That's why wouldn't it be nice to be ambidextrous as a painter? Maybe some of you are. All right, I'm going to break this edge just to let a little air out over there, let a little air out over here. Not necessarily like forever. Sometimes I do this and then I cover it, but it feels to me like I need a little activity. That's a little painterly edge technique there. Good, I'm just taking a moment to soak it in. I'm going to take that rich dark green and just add a little under the stemming, like that little core of the apple underneath, just so it goes green where it's dark there. Okay. And I've got like a violet. Well, that's probably too light. I've got a violet in my hand here. I'm just going to play at the edge again. A little bluer, just a little bluer. Coming right up, right at the ridges of the apple. It'll catch a little light and create this color. I'm gonna come in not quite as dark as the other green, but still green. And we'll just get a bit of the green transition under the apple here. Bring that green to this leaf. This is a very earthy green, not very chromatic. Anything ochre is like earthy, yellow ochre, green ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, all earth colors made from soils, you know, and they're great. They have this nice warmth and not too astroturf looking. You know, astroturf, my son plays soccer on astroturf. It's fake grass. So we don't want to create the fake greens. Yeah, that's good. And then I'm going to bring a little note of brown in on this branch. I moved the branch because mine was extraordinarily wrong before. I love to emphasize just how wrong it was. No one will ever know. They'll be none the wiser once we look at this painting at the end. Okay, yeah, that's nice, that little bit of green. I think we should bring that green that's not there yet into the apple, like just a little note of wow, it's maybe I'll lean, that's yellow ochre. This is nice, yeah, this has that little bit of green in it. I'm just gonna use a very light hand and just add a bit of texture. Direction of stroke matters. There it is. Okay, and that's good. Coming back in and cleaning up my mess. Just a little dark next to the light. Sometimes right next to the light, you get that darkening of the shadow, at the core shadow, right? Right there, like right next to the light, it darkens just a bit. Okay, a little more color up in this foliage to bring in. Sometimes you gotta just do it. Make the bold statement. Here we are. Perhaps a bit of change to a different green here. This is another warm green, just a little closer to the middle of the you know, further away from yellow. And maybe just a bit here. So I don't need to necessarily know what's happening with all these leaves. And I realize that can create a feeling of confusion or indecision as you're painting. Just keep squinting. Keep squinting your eyes. See if you can just kind of focus in on where pops and punches. This is a blue-gray, like a grayish, a neutralized blue-green. That's really what I'm using right here. So a nice color to come up. Maybe we come next to this and just carve a little light through a denser area so it's not as light, you know. There we go. Now what? Now what? I'm going to step back and take a look. I want my turquoise in my hand again, friends. So I'm going to come over here. You and I have been away from each other far too long. I know. Thank you for, it's like that scene in the movie where the friends come back together. It's very important. Turquoise and me. It's a memoir. Maybe you'll tune in a few years from now and I'll be in a whole different stage, feeling affection toward another color. Isn't it wonderful that we can have favorites? I want to encourage you, have favorites. Get in touch with your favorite colors and color combinations and palettes because, you know, you are unique and personal and your color palette should be unique and personal to you. The things you love. Just wanted to kind of carve at that edge and create a little more interest there. I like that very much. I'm going to come up top with a deeper, this is a deeper, I think it's a darker turquoise. Yeah, just slightly darker. And just scrub at that. I like the kind of crackly way the ultramarine blue and the turquoise are kind of playing off each other. I'll be careful I don't create a tangent there in the corner. I don't want to leave the corner of my painting with a little sharp accented mark. That's exciting. How about lavender? Just, you know, another one of my favorites. I have a whole arsenal of favorites apparently. So yeah, look at how that pink, this is lavender, but it looks pink when you put it down next to turquoise, and it's a subtle compliment. We're just reinforcing what's happening in the painting. I'm just gonna add a little here and there. Maybe we just scrub it in, just put it in there and let it live. If we rub it around with our hand, we'll kind of lose some of the joy and some of the clarity of the description. So it's not that I won't blend with a finger, but in the bottom, I'm careful. I don't want to get a muddy. If I lose the surface of this black, I can kind of there can be a point of no return. There is such a thing. This is a different lavender. Now I'm just going to mix this in down here where things get a bit lighter. I need this beautiful red violet just in this corner. How about this color? Fuchsia. This color belongs in this painting. I hope you agree. I'm just bringing all my friends out here just to get in this sandbox of joy. Beautiful. Really pretty. I want to play with this red. This red is just, it ought to be used. But we'll be careful. Maybe we just sparkle in a little note, a little specular note here and there. I think I need some color on these, something. I think they look good, graphic, but just a little green would be nice. There we go, that's already better. Just break this up a bit. One shift towards the blue-green again here. We'll kind of feel like a leaf kind of goes up and out there. Keep them guessing. I'm going to step back, soak it in. It's pretty close. This feels a little heavy, actually, that edge. Maybe I should use a little bit more infusion of red. I don't know, it goes to, I like that the value is strong, but it seems to go too dead for the core shadow of this gorgeous apple. So let's warm it up with our rich crimson. Modify that a little. That seems to be better. Still has that strength of value, but more, yeah, this crimson's great. We'll use that. I like that I'm just letting these two connect to each other because I see that there's a dark moment there, but I don't know how important it is. You can put it in your painting. I'm sure it would look okay, but I'm going to leave the power of that connection going. Just kind of letting my eye roam around. I have a golden ochre hard pastel here, and I'm just going to maybe let a couple of little branches happen, little light yellow foliage stems. That's enough. I don't have to go crazy with that. These little black marks on the leaf, I'm going to scrub into them. Scrub, scrub. Looks good. I do feel like maybe, I don't know, just a little break of the edge. Maybe just have a crazy pink here. This is one of the more unusual pinks. It's a Sennelier. I'm gonna just add it into this little moment. Another color I would not use a lot of. It's too strong, too chromatic. But just a note at the edge is surprising and interesting. I think we can get away with that. So really pretty. I think we're just about there, friends. I'm just kind of letting my eye roam around. Maybe that's a little funky. We can add, that seems too dark, light. We have to keep the value structure going as we make adjustments. Like that fresh light. I want that edge just slightly more clarified because this apple has less volume to turn it. I'm really ensuring that the edge tells the story. That's good. Boy, I love the way that lavender pops in and says hello here and there. So this looks a little like heavy for underneath, so I'm just gonna touch it and maybe come in with a black and just let that little recession where it goes under this, just let that get darker. Looks good. I've never really, people ask me this all the time, how would I sign the painting? So I'm gonna take this Pastel, this rusty red we started with, and that lower left is a good spot. Just kind of using this as a blending tool for a second. I'm still messing about with this edge. Forgive me, but one last, there it is. Last adjustment to that corner turn. And here we go. My signature is more of a mark than anything. P-I-C-A-R-D. And the pastel pencil is useful at the top of the P. And my dash. And there we go. Orchard apples, what a joy. It's such a fun subject matter, really, especially in the harvest season. And as the leaves fall, it's just fun to freeze these moments and paint them to celebrate the season of abundance, right? That's really what it is. So we've talked about nature's complementary colors of red and green. We've talked about how to use value to sculpt form. And we've really looked at the positive and negative shapes to design with contour and really create a striking composition without doing all the tiny little details. Really fun on a dark surface. I hope you enjoyed this. It is such a joy to be with you. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click that little bell icon so that you can be notified when we have new videos releasing to you. It's a joy to be on this journey and to encourage you in your creative development, friends. So until next time, keep showing up at the easel for your creative dreams. Take care.